In the remote and desolate town of Ravenswood, nestled deep within the heart of the American Midwest, a tale of unspeakable horror unfolded. Unlike the novella 1920 by Stephen King, the characters in this story are different, but the malevolence lurking in the shadows remains the same. Meet Samuel Carter, a worn and weary farmer whose face bore the scars of a life spent toiling in the fields. Samuel's wife, Sarah, was a woman with an ethereal beauty that seemed out of place in the rustic landscape. She possessed a kind heart and an unshakable love for their daughter, Lily. The Carters lived a simple life in their sprawling farmhouse, surrounded by acres of cornfields that stretched as far as the eye could see. But beneath the weight of domestic bliss, a darkness began to fester in Samuel's heart. The land, his family's sole source of sustenance, was slowly slipping through his fingers. Debtors and harsh weather had plagued him for years, casting a long shadow over his hopes and dreams. Desperation gnawed at him day and night, driving him to the brink of madness. One fateful night, as the winds howled and the rain pelted the windows, Samuel found himself alone in the dimly lit kitchen. A venomous thought had taken root in his mind, a sinister whisper that promised relief from his woes. He believed that by taking his wife's life, he could claim her inheritance and turn their fortunes around. With trembling hands and a heart heavy with dread, Samuel crafted an intricate plan. He would lead Sarah into the barn under the pretense of sharing an intimate moment, and there he would snuff out her life in the most brutal and callous manner. He couldn't bear to face the consequences of his actions, so he would craft a confession, casting himself as a grieving husband. The night arrived, with thunder and lightning setting the stage for the gruesome act. As Samuel led his unsuspecting wife into the barn, his mind raced with the weight of his impending sin. He chose a sickle as his instrument of destruction, its cold steel blending in the dim light. As Sarah entered the barn, the aroma of freshly baled hay filled the air, masking the scent of impending doom. She gazed lovingly into her husband's eyes, unaware of the horrors lurking behind them. Samuel hesitated for a moment, the echoes of their life together pulling at his conscience. But the desperate whispers in his head grew louder, drowning out his moral qualms. With a sudden, brutal swing of the sickle, he severed Sarah's life from her body. The sickening thud of metal meeting flesh forever etched in his memory. Blood sprayed across the barn, splattering the hay in a grotesque tableau of violence. As the life left her eyes, Samuel realized the enormity of his crime. His hands, once steady and sure in their farm labor, were now stained with the blood of the woman he had once loved. His soul had been forever tainted, and the weight of guilt bore down on him like 1,000 tons of lead. Shivering and horrified by his own actions, Samuel hastily penned a confession. In it, he detailed the grisly murder of his wife, claiming that he had acted out of grief and desperation. He wept as he read over his words, knowing that he would face the consequences of his crime. Once the confession reached the authorities, weeks passed, and Samuel's life spiraled into chaos. The authorities descended on the farm, arresting him for his heinous crime. The once thriving fields now withered in neglect, and his daughter, Lily, was left orphaned. The town of Ravenswood buzzed with gossip, their tongues wagging with tales of horror. But the story did not end with Samuel's arrest. Instead, It was only the beginning of a terror that would haunt the town for generations to come. Late at night, as the full moon cast eerie shadows over the Carter farmhouse, strange occurrences began to unfold. Lily, left alone in the old, creaking house, heard whispers in the walls. The voices seemed to be a sinister chorus, taunting her with the knowledge of her father's crime. In the dead of night, Lily would be awakened by the apparition of her mother, her spectral figure drenched in blood, her eyes accusing and sorrowful. The tormented spirit of Sarah Carter, robbed of her peaceful rest, had returned to seek vengeance. The townspeople, once sympathetic to Samuel's plight, now lived in fear of the malevolent entity that had taken residence in the Carter farmhouse. Lily's life was a waking nightmare, her home transformed into a haunted prison. As the years passed, more and more inexplicable events plagued Ravenswood. Crops withered, livestock perished, and a palpable sense of dread hung in the air. The townsfolk whispered that the land itself had turned against them, cursed by the malevolence that Samuel had set in motion. But the true horror was yet to be revealed. The spirit of Sarah, driven by a thirst for retribution, did not limit her malevolence to the Carter family alone. She reached out from the darkness, extending her curse to all those who had been complicit in her murder, and all who resided in Ravenswood. One by one, the town's inhabitants met with gruesome fates, mysterious accidents, unexplained disappearances, and deaths plagued the once thriving community. The malevolent force that had been unleashed would not rest until it had taken the souls of all who had turned a blind eye to the dark secrets of Ravenswood. As fear and despair consumed the town, whispers of a curse passed down through generations, a curse born of the sins of the past. The inhabitants of Ravenswood were trapped in a never-ending nightmare, with no escape from the relentless wrath of Sarah Carter's vengeful spirit. The once fertile land now lay barren and desolate, a stark testament to the horror that had befallen Ravenswood. Samuel Carter's crime had not just claimed one life, but unleashed a never-ending nightmare that would plague the town for all eternity. The horror of Ravenswood was a lesson in the unforgiving nature of darkness, the unrelenting grip of vengeance, and the inescapable consequences of evil deeds. The legacy of Samuel Carter's confession would forever serve as a chilling reminder that some sins can never be atoned for, and some horrors can never be contained.